Hey there, it's Shauna. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know what you need, like I know what will help you feel better. This video is simply my attempt to share with you some of the major things that have helped me, that in my personal experience have had the biggest impact in going through a very difficult time. Granted, there are some overarching common themes that help people through things like this. People tend to do better when they're connected with a community, when they're in nature, when they're getting physical movement, when they can express themselves in some way. But, everyone is different. And I am currently not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. So this is, and also I don't know exactly what you're going through. So this video is, again, simply an attempt to share what's really worked well for me, and to also simply tell you that you're not alone, and that many other people have experienced and are experiencing what you may be going through or have gone through, as far as going through a difficult time, dark night of the soul, depression, even suicidal thoughts and those kinds of things. So, all right, let's get into it. First tip: there are no steps. It's really a spiral. It's really a process. So I know that we like to kind of chunk things into, okay, I do this, then I do this, and then this happens. I put in this kind of action, and then I get this result. And when we're dealing with very intense psychic material, very heavy material, when we're dealing with emotions, things are not linear. So I realize that may seem simple, but it also, for me, was a huge relief when I realized that this process of working through some deep emotional shit is not a linear process. And I'm going to make progress and then spiral back and then spiral forward and go left and right and all the ways around. So when I realized that, life is not this constant upward progression, that it is a spiral process, it was a relief to me. Tip number 2 is to practice surrender to this process. Trying to change things actually creates emotional quicksand. So if you are going through a difficult period, surrendering to that process, emotionally surrendering to it, and saying, and when I say surrender, I don't mean if something is happening in your life where it's not appropriate, where someone or something is causing you harm, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, if there's any kind of abuse involved, please do not surrender to that. That is never okay. That is never acceptable. What I'm talking about here is surrendering to the way that you feel. Surrendering to this process of going through a dark night of the soul, or going through depression, or having a really challenging internal experience. Because, and this is really, really key, this is like at the top of the list for a reason, because when you feel bad about the way that you feel, it actually makes you feel worse. And when you try not to feel the way that you feel, it makes it worse. It actually, I find it amplifies a feeling when you try not to feel the feeling. And then there's all of these other feelings that come along with it. So for example, if you are feeling sad or even depressed, and you're like, I shouldn't be feeling that. What's wrong with me? I need to not feel that. I'm just going to think positive, and I'm going to use my will to get through this. Maybe that works. But I think that if it's more this deeply rooted feeling of sadness or depression, depression is a sadness that really seemingly doesn't have a cause. Like, there's nothing external that seems to be causing it. If you try to push that away, it actually, you're essentially repressing a feeling, And that feeling is just energy. It's emotional energy, and when you don't allow it to like move and to be felt, it actually kind of gets like stuck, and it starts to sort of like, it's still there. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to have all of these other feelings like guilt about feeling depression or anger at yourself for feeling this way. So that's why tip number 2 is to practice surrender to the way that you feel. And that can just be like, oh man, I'm really feeling this way today, right here in this moment. And getting curious about that and just letting it be the way that it is. Tip number 3 is to go outside. Ironically, when a person feels really shitty, they don't often want to go outside, but it can be very therapeutic. So this can be going for a walk. It can be finding, if you have like a park or trees, or even if you happen to live near the ocean or another body of water, just go there. It may not necessarily make you feel elated and super happy and get rid of everything, but it's going to help you process things. It's going to help you connect to your creatureliness. It's going to help you connect to your body and to the natural rhythms around you. It can have a very calming effect as well. The other part of this is to go out into public. And even if you don't interact with people, sometimes that's actually better, but to go out and be in the world with people. We're naturally creatures of social and socialization and community. And when a person is feeling bad, they will typically isolate themselves. And this causes, this kind of like exasperates the isolation and the feelings of aloneness. So it can be really helpful, just to go to a coffee shop and have a cup of coffee instead of having it at your house, doing that around other people. Maybe even finding a regular place that you can go to where it feels like, oh yeah, like I'm going outside, but I feel comfortable here. This is my place. And, I always see that person working on their, their phone calls, or the barista knows my name, or whatever. Anything like that to get you out into the world can be helpful. Tip number 4, I found this very helpful, to find creature comforts, feelings that you can take in via your body. Now, this is can be kind of tricky because some things can be not helpful. So anything that involves like texture, sense, foods, movements that are pleasing to you can be very helpful. It can be therapeutic. It can be soothing. So the trick with this, though, is to, use caution if you struggle with any kind of substance abuse, whether that is drugs or alcohol, or, even caffeine, or food. If those are kind of like trigger things for you, then maybe pick something else. Pick like stretching, or, maybe there's like a certain clothing or a blanket or a pillow even that feels really good to you. This is important because it connects you to your body. It gets you out of your head. And I think that a lot of times when a person is in a dark place, they're very much in their head, and things get exaggerated and elaborated on, and then we lose our connection with the body. And the body is what brings you down into everything being okay. So, you'll have to see what works best for you, but I find anything that brings in that feeling of soothing and nurturing and comfort via the body can be a good way to get in. Let's see. Number 5 is to limit exposure to people who want you to be different than you are. Limit exposure to superficial conversations because they might heighten feelings of alienation. So I think that when someone's going through a difficult time, people don't always know how to handle that. And that's no fault of anyone other than like just the culture that we're in, because we're in our westernized culture, we're trained that it really isn't okay to be like sad or to, have anxiety or, to be anything other than happy and excited and bubbly, especially for women. We're expected to have, this like very pleasant demeanor all the time. And that's not reality. Reality is that you're going to feel sad sometimes, and reality is that a lot of people in our world now struggle with depression. And one of the biggest fucked up things with that is that the people in the world also don't know how to deal with a person who has depression. They don't know how to talk to that person and to let them be themselves. So some people, of course, know how to do this, but some people in your life might exacerbate this when they're trying to get you to feel better, when you're really just trying to process what's going on. And it can actually make a person feel even more alone when they don't feel heard or seen. I think there's kind of like a fine edge with this too, because I do want for you to feel connected. But at the same time, if there is someone that is not capable of connecting with you, that can actually be more alienated. So I would just, notice, are there people in your life who are not safe to really to talk with about your feelings? Maybe limit your exposure with that person or those people, or share with them like, hey, this is how I am right now, and I ask that you accept me as I am. So that kind of leads me into number 6, is to tell people how you are. If someone tries to cheer you up, kindly tell them that what you're going through right now. I mean, you don't have to divulge everything, and in fact, sometimes that can be kind of overkill. But you can tell them, hey, like, I'm going through a hard time, and the way that you can support me is to just let me be the way that I am, and to listen versus trying to fix me. I think that's a big thing that happens is when a person is going through a dark night of the soul, the people in their life will try to fix them and try to figure out what's wrong. And this is not a process that involves someone else swooping in and fixing you. It's an internal process of experience. All right. Tip number 7 is to find those people who are safe for you to talk to. So this can be someone who is a counselor or a coach or a therapist is amazing. Can even be a teacher or a friend or family members. When I say safe, I mean I want you to find, ideally, like at least one person who you can say, hey, this is really how I'm feeling. And that person does not try to fix you. They don't try to come up with solutions. They listen to you. They listen to you and they ask you questions about how you feel. So again, therapist, is amazing for this. That's what they do. Counselors, teachers, crisis hotline, anything like that is super amazing, where there is a trained professional who that's what they do. They're there to be that, to create that space for you to experience yourself and to express in a most authentic and deep way. Of course, not everyone has access to those things. There's a lot of resources, though, that you may not realize. So again, there's a lot of crisis hotlines if there's something really intense in the moment. But a lot of cities have no or low cost therapy that is provided, whether that's, in community center or shelter or what else was I going to say? Oh, even schools, a lot of colleges or schools will have no or low cost counseling. So those are things to explore. I think that is invaluable to have a person that you can talk to. It does get a little tricky with friends and family because they have an invested interest in you, being a certain way. So it's nice if you can find someone who is totally unbiased. But tip number 8 is fuck it, just talk to people. So I say that because if you're like, oh my gosh, Shauna, I'm going through this hard time and no one really understands me, I don't have anyone in my life who I can talk to, that is, you have to talk to someone, or you don't have to do anything. But I find that it's really, really difficult to keep all of this to yourself. It is excruciating even. And sometimes the people that you think are not really able to hold space for you, they may surprise you. I literally had this experience where I felt like there was no one that I could talk to. And I talked to several people who, I was kind of like, I was kind of at my wit's end because I didn't really know what to do. And I was feeling incredibly alone. And on a whim, I was just like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to tell these people what I'm going through and what I'm actually feeling. And I was really surprised. I was surprised at the way that they responded and how it was very caring and supportive and nurturing. And they didn't necessarily have the words to, they didn't know what to say, but they listened. And then I felt better just by putting it out there. So again, I think that needs to be kind of the talking to people about things. There needs to be a setting aside of the expectation of how they're going to respond. But again, I think that, ideally you look for people who are safe, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to put it out there. You need to let people know what's actually going on with you. And some people might disappoint you in the way that they respond, and some people really may surprise you in the way that they respond. All right, so that leads into tip number 9, is to create a support system of people who you can turn to. So create this, again, even if it's just one person, create a lifeline, a resource, and at the same time, realize that no one person is going to relieve your suffering, even if you're going to therapy. No one person or activity is going to make everything better for you. And I know that kind of sucks, but it is a process of you. It is a process of you finding the resources within yourself to feel whole. What else did I want to say about this? This is something that happens organically within you. I think that when we feel bad, especially if we're in relationships that are maybe codependent, or we have like a really strong intimacy and bond with someone else, there can be an expectation that that someone else needs to do something to make us feel better. And I think that really just sets us up for disappointment. So again, this process of going through, whether it's dark night of the soul or depression or severe anxiety or whatever it is that you want to call it, I think that it requires both. It requires that there are people in your life that are there to help you get through this as best they can, and you're there to help yourself get through this as best that you can. And the process is really just showing up one day at a time, again, without expectation of someone or something being able to fix you, and then knowing that also you will get through this. I think that's the biggest thing, is that it does feel like forever sometimes, but it's not. It is just a period in your life. And the more that that you can show up for it and be like, you know what, it doesn't feel good, but I'm here and I'm existing. You know, life will go on and things will move and things will evolve. Tip number 10, last one, is to have a purpose every day. And I found this was really important for me. Sometimes the purpose can be just getting out of bed. Sometimes it can be, you know, going to work. Sometimes it can be having a conversation with someone else. It doesn't matter what it is, but I think that having a purpose can be motivating, can help you bring yourself to meet the day, to meet this challenging experience. And again, that can be, you know, getting out of bed. It can be writing something down. It could be writing down your feelings. It can be connecting with another person. Anything like that. So, let's see. I think that's all. Is that all that I wanted to say? All right. Yeah. So those are, again, just some things that I found that helped me get through a very difficult process. So I'm curious what is going on with you. Leave me a comment and let me know if you've been through an experience like this before, where you've been through a hardship or a challenge, dark night of the soul, and what has helped you. Or if you're going through something now, what do you find helpful? And maybe there's something else that you found helpful that I haven't talked about here. Most of all, I just really want you to know that we all go through challenging times, and we are not alone in this. And life is meant to be lived, and life is long, and I'm here to support you as well. If there's anything that I can do for you, please let me know. I look forward to reading your comments to see what else you find helpful and nurturing and comforting. Wishing you a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.